morning. This is our first week in Advent, and our theme is we're going to tell the story. And this morning, my name is Cheryl Gilliard, and I'm going to help you tell the story. Anyway, the sermon series is What Child Is This? The first scripture is taken from the book of Lamentations. And Lamentations was written by Jeremiah about the exile of Israel from Jerusalem. Lamentations chapter 3, verses 46 to 57. Our enemies laugh at us with open mouths. The snare and pit of the hunter lie ahead of us, devastation and ruin. Rivers of water from my eyes because my people are destroyed. Tears flow continuously from my eyes, diffusing all comfort, all of this while Yahweh watches from the heavens. My spirit is grieved as I see the fate of children in my city. Those who become my enemies without provocation chased and harangued me like a bird. The second reading is taken from the book of Luke, chapter 2, verses 1 to 5. In those days, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged, and who was expecting a child. The sermon series, written by Reverend Dr. Craig S. Pesti-Stroble, is titled King of Kings, Really, Really. Do you remember that musical that was made into a movie, Fiddler on the Roof? In the opening, where Tevier is telling us about Anatevka, his town, someone asked the beloved rabbi, "Rabbi, is there a blessing for the Tsar?" The rabbi responds, "Yes, my child, there is a blessing for everything. May the Lord bless and keep the Tsar far away from us." We can probably relate to this sentiment. The czars, kings, emperors, and even presidents and prime ministers. Let's keep them back in their seat of power and pray they don't bother us too much. Of course, nowadays we say that at our own peril. Everything going on in the seats of power will affect us in some way eventually. Civilizations, empires, city-states have always set up systems of power and domination. There are always going to be Rome's, Moscow's, and Washington, D.C.'s in the world. Before Rome was Babylon, whose practice of domination was to subjugate neighboring kingdoms through their superior military and then exact tribute. If they met resistance, they were brutally overthrown, and the leading citizens, merchants, and soldiers were taken into captivity back in Babylon. Our reading from Lamentations this morning is from the time that Jerusalem was ransacked and its inhabitants marched off to Babylon in 597 BCE. Before Babylon, there were the Assyrians, the Egyptians, and and Mohenjo, and Daro, etc. Every civilization has had its central city where power was concentrated. Think of the Incas, the Aztecs, the Persians, the Mongol horde, etc. For Luke today in the Gospels reading, Rome was simply the latest empire based upon power and domination. A century and a half ago, Great Britain was the big dog empire. Today, the United States of America is the Rome of our day. So Luke is writing us today. Luke highlights this by beginning his gospel by reminding us that there will always be a Rome trying to run our lives, telling us who to like and who to dislike, who is more valuable than whomever else, who deserves money and devotion, and who is to give it to them, etc. So Joseph and Mary have traveled to Bethlehem to be enrolled. That's the way it is. Luke is saying domination system tell us where to go, what to do, and what will happen to us if we don't do it. The system speaks of scarcity in order to increase social anxiety. It encourages and even creates the sources of social isolation in order to instill fear, and creates false stories, tells lies about us and them in order to turn people against one another. All systems of power do this. Luke's whole gospel tears apart the domination system of his time, and thus domination system after piece by piece until he arrives at the picture of the early ecclesia, or collective community, that we have explored from time to time in worship and Bible studies. Luke writes to remind the second generation ecclesia that the Jesus movement, the way, was all about. It existed as a challenge to the domination system of Rome and all its cronies, but it was not a violent military challenge. Instead, it created an alternative community based on a unique, universe-sized understanding that all humankind is one beloved family whose divine parent is love itself. Let me say that again to let it sink in. Luke is saying that Jesus created an alternative community based on a unique, universe-sized understanding that all humankind is one beloved family whose divine parent is love itself. There were not to be hierarchies or positions of power over. Jesus said the leaders of the nations lorded over one another, but not so with you. They were to care for the needs of the people around them: food, clothing, shelter, health care, prison, advocacy, etc. Women were equal to men in all ways, but especially in regards to teaching and spiritual authority, and so on. This was what it meant when Jesus said, "Love one another as I have loved you." The Advent season and the Christmas stories are here to remind us that the light came into the darkness to show us our true nature as beloved children of God. We are to be these ecclesias of glory, shining brightly for all the world to see how much we can love each other. We are the lights of the world, Jesus tells us. We are to shine in the darkness. We are to love without counting the cost. We are to look out for one another. We are to do unto others as they would have us to do unto them. The universe is built on this kind of love. And in this season of Advent that we proclaim to the world that love has come into the world and is still here in the world, and by God, this is what it looks like. So, what child is this? This helpless babe in the manger. When the latter church becomes the religion of the empire, it's asserted by its authority by proclaiming that this babe was actually a king of all kings. Jesus would not have liked that. He taught that he had one heavenly parent whom he called Abba. And we are all children of that heavenly parent, and thus one family. He never referred to God as king, and he himself refused to be crowned as a king by the multitudes clamoring about him. There are people today who want to set up a so-called Christian kingdom in our country today and to rule over the world. But that idea has nothing to do with ecclesias that Jesus calls us to be. It has nothing to do with living and treating one another as beloved sisters and brothers of one spiritual parent. It's about power and domination, plain and simple. Let's not give in to that. Instead, as we look at the babe in the manger, let's see the one who would grow up and show the world that God is a God of love, compassion, justice, and mercy, not wrath and vengeance. This babe wrapped in swaddling cloths would one day look out on the hungry multitudes and tell all who would follow him to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the refugee and stranger, visit those imprisoned by the state. He would tell all who sought to follow him, love one another as I have loved you. Go into the coming nights and days, practicing extravagant love with reckless abandon. Look past political slogans and power mongering to see the person beneath the cap as another human being in need of love. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit the imprisoned, advocate for the stranger, the foreigner, the refugee, the migrant seeking safety, because that is the way of Jesus and the way of biblical love. And if you get right down to it, it is the very story of Christmas itself. Thank you.
We are now coming to a time of prayer, and in this series of Advent, we have a new song that we are learning for our prayer time, and Lisa's going to play it, and I'm going to sing it through one time, and then we'll do it together.